Okay, well, it's 10:01 on this clock, about 10 o'clock on the wall. We'll commence the meeting, the February 2016 meeting of the Public Safety Committee. I'm Paul Horn, Chair. The Assembly will we'll go around the table if you would introduce yourselves and move to the first decision.
Beloved, Sundin, William Hall, Tim Skip, Chris Tolley, Lee Smart,
Gary Dahl, AV.
Security District Fire Department.
Rob Fitch, Office of Emergency Management,
Melinda Freeman, Department of Health and Human Services.
Jack Frost, Code Enforcement.
Sharon Ainsley, Bruce Sanders.
We also have some members of the public here that may have some presentations or questions. But when we get to that point, we'll ask you to introduce yourself. The meeting is being recorded, so just saying good morning. We won't know who you are for the record. So if we could just have you say your name and spell it as you need.
Mr. Chairman, may I offer a motion to reorder the agenda this morning and move item 5A ahead of reports. Mark has got a press engagement this morning. If you could accommodate him, it would be appreciated.
Very good. Any objections to the reorder? Mr. Lassard,
Sir.
are you able to present your?
Surely, I appreciate the opportunity. All right.
We just start. We just reordering the agenda.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee members and members of the public. My name is Mark Lassard. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services, and my official title is Emergency Preparedness Program and the Anchorage Safety Patrol and Center Program Manager. So essentially I wear two hats. I support our department in regards to our emergency preparedness missions, and then I also oversee the program services and contract for Anchorage Safety Patrol and Center. Okay.
Hold on just one second.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Formality. Ms. Gray Jackson joined us just as the meeting commences. Thank you. Sorry.
Sir. So, kind of a little bit of my background. I've been with the municipality since 1996. I started out working in the Safe City program in homelessness services. And so I've been around the safety patrol. Back then it was community service patrol since about, really off and on for about 20 years, except for I was deployed with the military for about 3 years between 2001 and 2008. So anyways, I'm gonna today kind of talk about service patrol as first responders and complements to the fire department and the police department, and also talk about how these services interconnect. But the thrust of the presentation today is going to be a kind of a data review for the year of 2015. And so as I start going through the data, if you would, if you have a question, maybe jot yourself a note or something, because I'm almost betting I will cover the information you're going to ask me about as I go through the briefing. So, and once again, I'm going to give you some background information, which will hopefully, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, but maybe there's some folks here that aren't as familiar, and I'll just cover it in pretty broad strokes. But anyways, when we talk about public safety, I'm looking at the three legs. We've got Anchorage Fire Department, of course, Anchorage Police Department, of course, and what many people probably don't think of right off the top of their head is the role of the Department of Health and Human Services, and specifically in regards to Anchorage Safety Patrol and the Anchorage Safety Center, which is operated under Title 47, which I'll talk about in a few minutes here. Just trying to figure out how I do this pointer. Oh, there we go. So anyways, and then you'll see out to the side, DOC stands for Department of Corrections. I'll talk about that a little bit also, and also about how we interface with the hospital emergency room departments. And let's see. One other thing about first responders that a lot of people don't know is public health workers are considered first responders under Presidential Executive Order number 8. So, when we get called out, we're expected to be available just like police officers or firefighters. A little bit about Title 47. Of course, it's a state law basically that not only gives us the authorization to operate Anchorage Safety Patrol and Center, but also somewhat of a mandate saying it's a community responsibility to provide these services. What we're assist with are individuals that are incapacitated by alcohol or drugs and they're thus at risk to themselves or present a risk to themselves and others. And they're in a public place, a street, sidewalk, alley, what have you. And of course, the idea here is we don't want people to be injured, outside, when they're facing hypothermia, vehicle collisions, maybe assaults from other people that are out there, predators. And that's what we're trying to protect them from while they're incapacitated. So we talk about, there's two elements to Anchorage, I guess some people say CSP, but Anchorage Safety Patrol is the vans that you see around town. And the center, of course, is the facility that's located adjacent to the jail, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyways, the vans, they're specially equipped. They have a robust communications package on board, not only radios for voice communications, they also have computers on board now that allow Anchorage Dispatch to track them and basically give them instructions on where to go next and what their priorities of work are. So when I say they're hardened, that means basically that the vans are not just right off the lot that you'd buy, normal cargo van or whatever, but the windows have been reinforced, doors have been reinforced, the paneling's been reinforced, because sometimes we do have people that try to do damage to these vans. And they wouldn't, your normal passenger van just wouldn't last. And of course, they have distinctive marking and lighting to allow them to, stop at different places on the street or on the sidewalk or whatever to be able to make contact with individuals that might appear that they need assistance. And one of the newer efficiencies that was built in is, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and then back in 2013 in the fall, we finally went to a 24/7 van service. Prior to that, it always been, started like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and a lot of times would be done by 3 o'clock in the morning. So closing that gap and wrapping those van services all the way around for 24 hours was a huge step forward. And I believe that the statistics will bear out that it's paying dividends as far as the impacts that it's had on Anchorage Police Department.
Sorry if I could.
Sir.
Just to reflect the record, Mr. Trainee, the committee member, is also joined. No worries. All right. Once again, the Safety Center is actually the facility where most individuals are transported to in order to go through the sobering process. Once again, protective custody under Title 47 for us is a 12-hour hold or until the person is no longer incapacitated, whichever comes first. The facility itself has a fire code capacity of 112 persons, which for us means that's about 100 people, because under our contract and under the way our service is designed, there has to be a 10-to-1 client ratio. So for every one staff member, there can be up to 10 clients. So obviously if we had 100, we'd need at least, once we go to 101, that's 11 staff, that's 112. And I've only seen in I call it our new facility, it was built back in 2002, but in that facility I've only seen it reach capacity twice, and that was in 2013. We have not approached capacity since that time. Okay, there's a lot going on with this table, so I'm going to kind of walk it through and tell you give you some definitions and then explain a little bit of the significance of some of these numbers. So for instance, calls responded to. Basically, these are calls that came in, and you'll note that this is highlighted here. That's where AFD took over the dispatching about in June of 2013. So anyways, these are all the calls that came in. You can see calls versus transports, there's a big difference. Bear in mind, a lot of times what happens is we'll get multiple calls for the same individual or the same situation. And a lot of times, especially if a person is mobile, still sometimes people will call and say, hey, I've seen this person stumbling, they're walking, whatever. So a lot of times people will be gone by the time we arrive if they're not on the ground or stationary. And once again, everybody has cell phones, so we'll get multiple calls, usually on the same person. Then we go to the actual transport. So this is where there was a call for a van. This is where the van, went out and actually made contact with somebody and transported them. And you can see we're down 9% from 2014 to 2015. So keep an eye on this number here.
it goes down by 9%, but there's a significant increase in the actual efficiency of the people that we're transporting, and that'll bear out when we get talking about how many people were actually intaked into the station and where they came from. Okay, so you go from 17,600 down to the actual intakes. Now this is where I say this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the person is recorded when they walk through the door. They're actually taken into custody. They're actually, I guess, booked in, if you'd want to use that terminology. Let's see. So this is a real hard. We have a database that tracks all this. So 22,000, which is down by 13% from last year, which is really, to me that marks significant progress. And I think along with all our efficiencies, that this is a good sign. So, and I'll say this later on, but I'll just throw it in here right now. We pretty much know there's two main drivers that drive our demand for services, if you will. It's going to be the weather, so very seasonal. Colder, more miserable it is, the more folks we're going to have be responding to, the more folks that are going to end up at the station, and availability of funds in the community. So, first of the month is usually a busy time for us when the assistance checks go out, or if there's other funds that will enter the community. You'll see in our seasonality chart, like October is a jump up month for us, permanent dividend fund time. So let's see. And then our unduplicated clients served, it's down by 1%. That's down by 46 individuals. I don't know if it's just coincidence or not, but that's how many beds there are at Carluck Manor. This one right here, this is where an AFD ambulance has a response to the center to pick somebody up or to respond to a medical emergency. Now this number is actually down by 4% from last year. And I'll talk more about this a little later, but we got this thing going on in our community called SPICE. And I believe what's affecting that number, these responses to the station, is when our crews are making contact with folks that are in altered mental status or admit to smoking spice, or one of their friends said they've been smoking spice. They're, usually the BRACs are extremely low, like 000. They will be presenting as extremely intoxicated. That's when we'll call the fire department. So I think a lot of those medical emergencies that would have last year made it to the center, they're actually getting resolved in the field with AFD in the field, so they don't get all the way to the center. Now this line here, I just added this year because we've been working with APD and DOC about some issues, capacity and response and things like that. And one of the things it says transfers to APD or releases to APD. So what happens is we get an individual to the station and they decide that they don't want to be there, or they assault someone, or they become violent, whatever the case may be. We decide that we can no longer deal with this person. They may be charged with disorderly conduct, or they may just get transferred as a non-criminal hold to DOC. But that has to be done by a police officer. So that number there is representing the times we've called APD to either transfer someone to non-crim custody at the jail, or to actually arrest them. And the good news here is, our calls to APD for this type of response is down by 19% from last year. The really good news is, and all these guys are going to jail, so the Department of Corrections. So the good news is, even better, from 2011 to here, that's a 70% drop. So what's happening is the staff down there is working more closely with clients. They're using their de-escalation techniques. They're doing a lot of things before they're calling for trying to get folks into jail. And one of the things we'll talk about later also is DOC has put out a statistic that there was 3,000 non-criminal holds across the state of Alaska. Well, I would say that about 250 of those came from Anchorage. So there's other communities out there that don't have our facility, so their non-crims go straight to the jail. Okay, so now we talk about frequency of use. So a couple things to orient. These are unduplicated clients. That means they were either there once or up to 175 times, 174 times. And so these set of folks, this 1,500 plus folks, were only there once, and they represent almost 50% of the population. So we drop all the way down. So these are what we would call our heavy users, high demand users. We break it down by the top 200, which is actually 204 this year because there was a couple people tied for last place, I guess, in this category. And then there's the top 50 users, which actually this year is also 52 users. What I would tell you is there's a couple things that are significant here. One is this number here of 5 to 6% using 52% of all of the ASC intakes has been fairly constant over 5 years. It's the same. The top 200 people will always use 50% or better of the services. And that applies right here. It's a steady state, the top 50. So you have these folks here that the top 200 are using over 50% of the services. So instead of 22,000 intakes, we could have theoretically been down to 10,000, 12,000 intakes, if it weren't for these guys. The other good news story here is this number here, 27 to 70 intakes for the top 200, or 71 to 174 intakes for the top 50. That number is down. I mean, this number has been as high as 90 to 250. This number 36 to 90 something. So I guess what it's showing is there's a lessening of the chronicity even among the top users. So once again, we go back to say if let's say folks are either getting services, they're either getting treatment, housing, whatever. If you want to really affect the number of times that we intake folks or pick them up, this is the group that deserves the focus. I mean, rather than trying to concentrate on everybody that walks through the door that's going to be there one time, maybe in their life or whatever, high-end users. That's where the real change factor is. Sir.
I know I'm open at the moment. Any questions that any members of the committee might have? Is there anything so far? And I know that Mr.
Yes, you mentioned earlier that seasonality affects the busyness.
Yes.
To any extent, is the diminution you see a result of just warmer
It could be,
years?
and it could be. Yes, it absolutely could be. And I'd point that out. These last 2 years, I mean, as we all know, that have been here, have not been, as cold or as bitter as it was, like for instance in 2013. I own a snowmobile, and I know my snowmobile hasn't left the driveway in 2 years. I don't plan on taking it out.
So I know you say you have other slides and you want us to kind of keep the questions limited till the end of the presentation. Will you address budget, and also will you address any plans to address those top 50%?
I can touch on that, and I didn't bring detailed budget information, but I can certainly answer, budget.
We'll just let you continue then.
Okay. Okay, so I said earlier we would talk about means of arrival, and if you remember that our number of transports appeared to be down for 2015. But the significance here, didn't do that. The significance here is I can tell you, like I say, for looking at this for years, 95% of the transports are always between the van and APD. The difference is, in the past, this number has been more like 30%, and this number up here has been more like 65%. And then, of course, we have the normal, this number just seems to stay steady. We have folks that just come there on their own, about 5% of them, and then others that come from, obviously, family members bring them, a taxi might bring them, the airport police, the state troopers, but very, very small percent of the actual business that we do. So the real victory here is you've got those vans out there 24/7. They're handling over 80% of the work, really, and APD's workload in this regard has been dropped by about 51% over the past year. So the other thing that has stayed pretty steady state is we look at folks where they come from. Essentially what we track is place of birth. Historically and steady state is, 50 to 55% are from Alaska, but not Anchorage. So what that tells me, or I would put forth, is this is more than just an Anchorage problem. This is a statewide issue. And folks come here because, Anchorage is an economic services, healthcare hub. It seems to make sense. So, and this is a fairly steady state also, the split between males versus female users of the facility and the services. The one thing is it hasn't been significantly huge, but it's starting to even out a little bit more, if you will. There's females are catching up a little bit, not so much, but it's still obviously tilted more so towards males than females. And then this is a breakdown by race, ethnicity. And that leads me to it. The database that we currently use to capture data was written back in, I believe it was 2005. It's a FileMaker Pro database, and it's worked great, but at some point, and that's one of the my goals for this year, is to identify and institute a new database that will basically help us capture all the information that we need, and get regular reports, things like that. So like I said, database has worked. It's still doing an adequate job. I think we could it's time for an upgrade, and quite frankly, that upgrade's probably looking about a $50,000 to $100,000 project.
Mr. Evans had a question.
Sir.
On the last slide, when you did the breakdown of where everybody comes from, do you have that breakdown for the top 50 too?
We could query it that way, yes. I don't have it on this particular report, but I'm sure we could write a query to get that.
Mr. Train.
You said the updated database are around $50,000 to $100,000.
That's what I
Have you
just.
figured out the impact on our data people? Do they have the capacity to install this?
I've just started working with our business IT manager at the health department on it, so we're kind of just starting to the good idea
I would be
phase, if you will.
interested in the whole cost of it, not just the upgrade, but the cost in getting it on the system.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Steele.
Yeah, you were talking about out of Anchorage residents or out of Anchorage people that have used the facility. And I'm just wondering if that's not a factor of they have no family support here, therefore that's the only resource they have. And so it may be that they, not having that support, they just have found you.
One of the realities of our services is it is predominantly, we find, utilized by that we end up serving homeless folks, but it's not all homeless. Some folks do have homes. They're not. If we looked at unduplicated individuals, I'm sure those folks have been there once or but yeah, I believe you're right that folks get here and there's limited resources or limited options for them once they arrive here. Okay, now we're looking at the breakdown by age. And once again, very steady state. This age of 50 to 54 is the, that's always the high point of the curve. What's kind of a bad trend that we've also been observing the last couple of years is that instead of nice bell curve, that bell curve is starting to flatten out towards a more youthful set of clients, if you will. So we'll keep an eye on that. But years past, it was pretty much just this middle age right in here. Now it's starting to flatten out. As you can see, we're getting quite a few folks up in the upper age range, or the younger age range, I should say. Sorry. One thing about the BRAC here, historically, this number here for all the intakes, now the bracket, it's breath alcohol content. Some people talk about blood alcohol content. We don't do that. We use basically a field sobriety machine, little one. we brack people in the field, we brack people in and out of the station. One thing I would also like to point out about the brack, it's only one tool for the EMT in charge to use to judge someone's level of incapacitation. It gives them an idea, yes, this person's drunk. You know, just like if that number there were down to like 000s or 0.05 or something like that, and they were still altered mental state, leads us to believe they're on some type of drug or spice or whatever. But anyways, the point is, you know, obviously most folks that are probably too intoxicated to drive may not necessarily be incapacitated. Incapacitated usually takes a lot more than a 0.08. So anyways, just to point that out, as the BRAC is a tool and there's not like a flight line drawn like, oh, you're over this or you're over that. It's really a help for the EMT to determine that overall physical and mental capability. But one of the things that always stays steady too is the as you go up in chronicity, the average BRAC also rises. So, and given the spike we've had with the spice intakes, quite honestly, I'm expecting that we might be looking at the BRAC levels really dropping, because, you know, when you throw in a couple 000s in there, it's going to pull everything down that way. So we were talking about seasonality. I know this is I guess we'd say an eye chart, but 2015 is the red line, and you can see kind of, you know, over the years it does follow this trending. Okay, so here in this area where it's peaking, February, March, it starts to come down in April, May. That's when it warms up, and then we go along, starts to cool off, and then we have the, you know, PFD comes out, and we usually have a spike in this area. And then it, you know, we'll go back to its normal trend, if you will. But you can see it stays fairly consistent over time. So just wanted to throw out a couple updates, or, you know, I guess factoids about ASP, ASC, or the Safety Center. One of the huge jump for us was having Anchorage Fire Department take over the dispatching of the ASP. That's the vans. Used to be people would call, they would get what we would call a dispatcher at the center. That person would call the van, say your next call is this, and basically it was a first come, first served kind of setup. We coordinated with the fire department because what was happening, and the fire department knew it probably better than anybody, we were sending a lot of resources to the same calls. So we would get a call for somebody, let's say there's somebody down in front of the bus accommodation center or something like that. The van would go, there may be an ambulance there might be a police car there, fire truck. A lot of assets were being pulled in one direction. The beauty of having the Anchorage Fire Department dispatching is, and plus with our communications package, they can see our vans, where they're at on the, you know, across the city. They know who's closest. They know which apparatus or what resource to send. They can coordinate with APD if there's, you know, they'll find out if there's an APD officer there. It's just done wonders for the efficiency of the service as far as the application of resources. And also, which really increased the efficiency of the overall services, is we received additional funding in October of 2013. We went to the 24/7 van service. Not only did we close the 24/7 gap, we also applied additional vans to our peak demand periods, usually between, you know, the early or late evening to midnight or so, where we would have like 2 vans on at once. You know, we have a little bit of overlap where we'll have 3 for about a half an hour, but but having 2 vans out there has made the huge difference, especially during those high demand periods. And then, of course, NANA had been with us for about 8 years. They announced that they would be withdrawing from the contract. We went out to bid, and in July we awarded the contract to Gold Belt, and they started their services in October. A couple other things, we had a kind of a dated patchwork video surveillance system for the center just last month, or in December, excuse me. In December, we replaced that whole system with a brand new state-of-the-art system. It's a high quality. We went from 14 cameras to 18 cameras. I say 18 cameras, but really some of the cameras are so sophisticated they actually have multiple cameras inside them. So it's a very good system. And right now we once again in conjunction with Anchorage Fire Department, we're going from basically tough books like APD tough books to tablet computers in the vans, which will make more space for our folks that have to staff those vans, and it will also enable them to be more efficient, where they can capture data, write their reports, email, stay in communication without having to go into the station to do reports and things like that. So another efficiency that's being built into the system. Okay, we already talked about the dispatching, 24/7 ops. Another huge efficiency that a lot of folks don't see, or it's transparent, is we have what I call unified medical oversight. Dr. Levy is the sponsoring physician for both the Anchorage Fire Department and for the Anchorage Safety Patrol. Huge efficiency in the way that those two services work together as far as establishing protocols and standing medical orders. We already talked about the video system. In addition to that, we started using body cameras about a year ago, and now we're bringing the contractor Gold Belt is bringing new vans into the fleet. We by the end of this month or next month, we should have 3 new vans available. They're also equipping those vans with onboard cameras. And we already talked about the upgraded automation packages. And we're upgrading all the computers in the vans, and we have already upgraded all the computers in the station itself. And we have Gold Belt Incorporated brought on an operations manager that has a tremendous wealth of experience. He has background in law enforcement, he has background in fire and EMS operations, and he also has worked in many positions in local government. So that helps tremendously also to continue to develop efficiencies within the service. And it's my understanding that that we're also currently working towards, like I said, I don't know all the details about it, but it sounds like APD and AFD are working towards developing a unified dispatching system. So at the risk of talking out of turn, I don't know all the details behind that. Some of our challenges, I have DOC up there, Department of Corrections capacity. Just this week on Wednesday, we had a meeting at the Mayor's Advisory Board for EMS, and there was representatives there from the Department of Corrections, their medical director, and this other lady, her name I could pull out, is Laura Brooks, and we were able to work out, basically explain what the procedures were, what we were doing. They could tell us what they were doing. It seemed like we may all of a sudden, even though we've been working together for years, there was a lot of things that seemed to be cleared up almost immediately. And of course, the main reason that they were there that day was to talk about it was really the hospitals that had brought the issue forward, as far as they were having issues between DOC and the emergency room departments as far as providing medical clearances, not providing medical clearances, some communications issues. One of the things I think that people assume is that we're kind of like a jail at the center, and we're not. When the Anchorage Safety Center was designed, concept, whatever you want to refer to it, it was really based upon a medical model, a medical care model, more so than a corrections model, if you will. I have been to a place called Gallup, New Mexico, where they have a very similar service to us. They got the vans, they got the center, except their center is very much a Department of Corrections model, with electronic locks. I mean, it's a very much a lockdown facility. We don't have that. So anyways, we'll run into problems sometimes with folks that are incapacitated, but yet they don't want to stay there. And so that's where we run into the problem, where we need to move them over to a more secure facility. The other thing that we're running into, as I had pointed out earlier, is with our client base seeming to be coming in at a younger age. That in conjunction with the incident reports that I review on a daily basis, we're having, seems to be a little, more aggressive, more assaultive, violent type client. And then, of course, I already talked about updating and improving our existing database. And I say interagency communications here. I mean, I think that's in every sphere of business or whatever service we're providing. It's a lot of work. It's work to stay in touch. It's work to go to the MAB meetings. It's work to bring everybody together in one place at one time to put all the information out on the table. So, but it's, you know, I mean, it's just an ongoing challenge, and it'll always be like that. So what I wanted to leave you with is about, I guess, you know, we could almost replace public safety here with, you know, maybe public inebriate, Title 47 response. These are the folks that are involved, you know, the first responders between, you know, us, AFD, APD. Once again, I'd like to reiterate, I think we've made some huge leaps forward in regards to efficiencies. I think the numbers bear out that we're putting less of a lean on Department of Corrections. We're putting less of a lean on APD, and AFD is able to really manage our resources and apply them efficiently. And once again, the other partners that are impacted, of course, by everything that we do is our partners over at Department of Corrections when we got to get people in there. And we also have a lot of folks that we work with the hospital ERs every day. Either we're, you know, AFD's bringing people there to get cleared. We're picking people up from these folks. And, you know, a lot of times DOC is taking them off our hands and we just can't handle them.
So we have some questions. If everybody-
Sure.
Thank you. Looks like it is perfect timing. I'm fine. Mr. Hall.
I actually think Bill was.
Oh, Mr. Evans?
No, you weren't? Okay. I appreciate the report, thank you. There's some information you shared with me that's confusing to me though. When did you move into the new location?
I believe it was March of 2000. Was it 2002 or 1? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that for a number of years here you haven't reached capacity. And that baffled me because I know in 2012, 2013, when we were discussing going 24/7, NAMA shared with us that part of their concern is that we can do it, but you understand there's times we reach capacity.
Yes.
And we can't move anyone else in there.
Right.
When did we pass that problem? Because
Yeah.
I was under the impression we still are at the point where we hit capacity on a regular
Right.
basis.
So I should have brought that up. So that was the capacity I was pointing to up there was the facility capacity, what it could handle fire code wise. What we're still limited by is what we refer to as the client ratio. We by contract and policy have to maintain a 10 client to 1 staff member ratio. So we don't have an unlimited amount of staff that we're funding. So like let's say if we got any time during the day, there's a minimum of 3 staff. So that's 30 folks that we can take in. If during that time, it goes over 30, 32, 33, whatever, then we have to pull a van in to put additional staff into the station. So if we pull a van in, that's 2 more staff coming to the station, we can go up to 50. And especially during 2013, before we had additional resources and vans out, we were definitely pulling vans out of service to put them in the station to bring our ratios to allow us to take in more clients.
So it's not facility, it's staff.
Right. That's the constraining factor normally. Now this year the numbers have been low enough. We really haven't run into a situation where we've had to routinely pull the vans out of service. And especially since we have 2 vans, we might have to take 1 out for an hour or so like that, but it can go right back in as soon as the client numbers drop down to allow that. So a lot of times it's fairly transparent.
Thank you.
Mr. Trent. Mr. Steele.
Yeah, budget issue.
Sure.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but it seems to me when we added an additional van in 13, and we went to Gold Belt, I guess as a contractor. How's the budget been doing? Has it been? Is it on a serious 90-degree angle, or is the budget fairly stable?
Well, right now the contract is I don't know, the exact number I think is like 1,907,000, but it's $2,167,000 or 170. So it's essentially $2.2 million a year. As far as increasing that, I don't have a formal request from Gold Belt to increase that number. Right now, that's what they bid this year's services at.
And An annual contract?
An annual contract. And really, it's applied out, it's an annual contract that will have, I think, 4 remaining option years after this year.
Anything else? Ms. Bridget? If nobody else, I just wanted a couple of things that I'd like to point out. We're always, of course, looking for more, right? So you got great data, and I appreciate the presentation. One of the things that strikes me is birthplace versus place of residence. So someone may have been born in the Bethel region,
Sure.
but may have moved to Anchorage and call Anchorage home. So that data, if that can be ferreted out, that'd be wonderful. The other that begs the question is you talked about the top 50%, you circled it and said
Top
we can
50.
find resources for these folks would reduce drastically the number of intakes, particularly the consumption of the services. Is any of the information about these folks, is it protected HIPAA? Can we share this with caregivers in the community that to get the resources, them to the resources, or the resources to them?
Well, the data is restricted by Title 47, and there's specific parameters that it can be used in, and really the overriding philosophy behind the way Title 47 was written was to keep the information confidential, so there wouldn't be a stigma attached to having access to those services. So where we wouldn't have people trying to avoid being picked up or whatever, or running from the vans and things like that. That's the intent. We used to be covered under CFR 42 because we were receiving federal funds, which we don't receive any federal funds any longer for that service. So we're no longer under those federal guidelines. However, as a matter of course, we don't release individual identifying information that are using the services. We have done cooperative studies with the university, which that type of work is allowed under the Title 47 parameters. And once again, it is confidential between the researcher and us.
So the question would be case managers, caregivers, people that can give resources for
Right.
them, either them to the individual user,
Yes.
consumer, or the consumer to them. Is
And
there a
we-
way to bridge that?
Yes, there is, and we have done that. We have worked with providers under contract or memorandums of agreement to provide them information to allow them to make contact with clients.
And that seems like that might be the path forward, is trying to get that number down so that we can perhaps someday not have the budget number necessary because maybe there's a building but no one needs to be there, so to speak.
Mhm.
Don't know if we'll ever get to that day, maybe in Nirvana. And then I had another one, but I'll just get to you offline on that. I just don't remember at the moment what I was going in direction. Apologize. Had a moment. Anybody else from the first side?
Could I say one comment, Chair? One thing is that when we hear the homeless coordinator, Ms. Nancy Burke, discuss the by name list, which is the way that we can connect services to the individuals who are those top 50 users, that's the people we're talking about. When we work in the community with these individuals, and Mark is very familiar with them, in general, all of the folks that are working on homelessness know who these individuals are, so they often go from the safety center over to Beans or BFS. And so there are many avenues to outreach to the population. When we also hear in this committee about the intensive case management services offered by Rural PAP or the ACT or Choices services offered by the agency called Choices, we've received those reports in the ad hoc committee on alcohol and substance abuse. All of these agencies are very intensely focused on those top 50 users, and that is part of the overall homelessness plan, is to hit those folks. And eventually, our goal is to go farther upstream to prevent people from using the safety center at all. But I thank you very much, Mark, for your presentation. It's really excellent. And I also want to recognize our partners. We could not do what we do without AFD and APD. They've just been fabulous partners all along. And your support from the Assembly to increase the budget for the safety center by over $200,000 helps these efficiencies. So we really appreciate it.
And I believe Chief Gilman had a question or comment.
I did, and actually, Belinda answered most of what I was going to ask, so thank you, Belinda. The one other point was, do you have a sense of the top 50 you're looking at? How many of those are cooperative with you, or do you have a sense of some that are actually non-cooperative?
I would, not from direct contact with the individuals. I know I've read a lot about the problems, chronic public inebriancy, homelessness in other communities, stuff like that. The common theme I keep coming across is that a lot of these individuals don't see their lives being any different. So they're not imagining like what, you know, geez, if I called this case manager or went to treatment and I'd get a house, you know, an apartment or whatever. So that seems to be probably the, you know, that's my understanding of it. I'm not, you know, like I said, I'm not a case manager. I really don't work directly with the clients on a day-to-day basis, so I don't have a real sense for that, other than what I read.
I just found those numbers very similar to the number of people that are continually illegal camping in the parks and stuff. It's about between 50 and 70, and I was just wondering if they weren't your higher end users or not.
I would not be surprised. I mean, I would anticipate that would be true, especially if they're you know, alcohol users.
So I just recall what I had, and then, again, due to time constraints, I don't want to get into a big dialogue, but it just begs the question, the safety center, is a fair assessment that a person using that service, staying at that facility, has to be, under Title 47, incapacitated to the point of either risk of harm to themselves or the community.
Yes.
So a person that, and I had an experience, and I can share it later, but just to say the guy wasn't intoxicated, but he had an illness, and it was also the middle of winter, in the middle of the night, and there was just no other place to put him. This is not like a storage staging facility that it could sit at and wait until better circumstances come along.
No, I mean, it really is it's not what's considered emergency homeless shelter. It's really a Title 47 hold facility.
But do we hold people even at lower bracks because of weather concerns, where perhaps there's capacity at, you know, because for instance, like the Brother Francis Shelter Rescue Mission, they don't want anybody drinking coming into the facility.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they make allowances for certain levels of intoxication when it's really cold. I believe they open
Condition 0, 0, all the way around. Yeah.
We don't do that either. We
Well,
reduce them.
And back in like 2012, 2013, we kind of experimented with that a little bit, saying, you know, like, and it was harsh. It was a harsh winter. I mean, you know, routinely below zero. And that's when we went to that facility capacity. Essentially there was no van service. Everybody was in the station. I mean, pretty much locked it down. And we assessed it and said, you know, we really need to stay within the mission parameters and, you know, really address the mission, I guess, if you will, what the operational guidance is and what we're allowed to do by law. So I certainly can appreciate that, because, like I said, we tried to embrace that, or to open up the doors a little bit for that, to allow for that based on the severity of the weather and everything. It didn't help the first responder services, is what I would say. It shut us down.
Just ironically, and this is more of a comment, I've actually had people tell me that maybe they'll get a big fifth bottle of whiskey so they can get drunk enough to get into the Senate. I mean, they're in that kind of no man's land. They're a little intoxicated, not enough to be in non-crim, not enough to be an ASP. Nobody will take them in a shelter because they're intoxicated to some degree. I mean, we've got this little gap, there's a crack. But anyway, that's a comment, and we'll move from there. Thank you so much for the
Okay,
presentation.
sure.
I appreciate it. Anything else? Appreciate it.
Thank you,
We'll
ladies
go
and
back to our
gentlemen.
regular agenda. I know time is, we're till 11, so we're going to move around fast, I suppose. Chief Keller, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Bill to come up at any point in time. But this is a perfect segue into what the SPICE conference was all about a few weeks ago. We brought together quite a few individuals. I was very impressed over a 2-day period of how heavy participation we had, as well as we did have the general public there with a number of individuals from the media for those parts that were open. We had doctors, scientists, homeless coordinator, politicians, educators, housing, VA, Native Relations, Department of Corrections, Parole, and Probation, and as well as law enforcement from not only Danvers Parole, but from across the state. The thing that became very evident, this is a true public safety concern, but it also takes the entire community to help with it. Certainly, law enforcement is prepared at those point in times to jump in there and take enforcement action, because we do know that because of these types of behaviors, and it attracts other crime, and there's other crime associated with it. But we don't believe, I don't think anyone does, that the way to fix this is by simply arresting individuals for their medical condition and so on. However, quite often, law enforcement is the last resort. When no one else can handle it, when it doesn't fit into someone else's program, law enforcement ultimately is left there to deal with it and handle it. So we're trying to continue the dialogue and work together, and there has been a lot of progress, and most of it being from understanding that this is a broad problem, not just a law enforcement problem. This is something that we're all in together.
Any questions on the teacher report? I will say I did attend both days in different capacity than from the assembly, my other job. But for a few moments, I actually made a comment. The chair was due to be there, but he was very ill and wasn't able to make it. So it was a very good statewide conversation, and though we have, I would say, larger percentage in numbers, I understand Kenai Soldotna had a significant find, if you will, of stash of people supplying on a larger level that I believe the state troopers and DEA are working with. We're talking about distributing large, bulky stuff. This product we all know is fun.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and unfortunately, this type of activity has no boundaries. So when individuals are displaced from their homes and their villages and so on, and come into Anchorage, then we inherit their stewardship and caring for them, as well as the criminal aspect of it has no boundaries. So just because we pass municipal laws and regulations and so on, that doesn't mean that Soldotna will follow the facility or whatever. So what we've seen happen in the past, that they will then go to smoke shops and places like that that don't have the same ordinances and the same deterrences, and then ultimately those products will end up on our streets and become a problem for us to deal with. But there was a very big case down in Soldotna that had a great impact, at least locally, on what we were being told by the troopers. But it's yet to be seen, how that affects our community.
Good. I appreciate all the efforts going towards it. It was a great symposium. So, there was, I believe, was that just distributed to me, or did everybody get the study done by the health department, the state department, I think, Health and Human Services, I believe. Did all the audit members, did you guys get a copy? I don't remember. I'll see if I can get it to the clerk to distribute. There was a significant survey of the time period, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it was July or August
It
through.
started through November.
Okay. And maybe you'll be able to address that part of this in the fire department. But it's a very telling data sheet, much like Mr. Broussard had, and something you can review at your own pleasure. And I think that the chief's office through the fire department, Health and Human Services, might be able to help interpret some of the numbers. But what I found very disturbing, concerning, is the largest number of clients, consumers of spice that were transported by our fire department to emergency rooms went to the Alaska Native Medical Center. And I believe, though they didn't say they weren't participating in the survey, they weren't as forthcoming with the data. And so some of the information about what happened and how significantly impaired they were, whatnot, was not available from their, and yet they had a larger number. So I don't know how we're going to be able to get past that going forward. I think there's some laws under the state that they might be able to invoke if they needed to, but it was a little concerning. But it was a very good information. So, Chief, is there anything else for Chief Gillen? Well done, sir. And we have an academy going on, and you're recruiting for.
Yes, sir. The current academy is about halfway through the progress, and they're very anxious. I spent some time at the academy this week, and they will do some firearms and some defensive tactics and so on. A good bunch of individuals. The lateral posting closes this weekend, I believe, and then for the June Academy, the posting closes the end of the month. So it's not too late for individuals that are interested in a new career to get that application. We'll take them right up till the deadline at 5 o'clock on the 28th or 29th. I'm not exactly sure which day, since we have an extra day this month. And those individuals are looking for an exciting career and a rewarding career, as well as giving back to their community, could be in a new job come June.
And Mr. Training, Mr. Grady.
Chief, how about laterals are we looking at?
right now, I believe we have 10 on the board.
How many we want to get?
I would love to get 30 if I could.
There's no capacity, right, no maximum?
That's correct.
That's what I want to know.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This training was reading online. Did a good job. Same question.
Mr. Stevens?
Are these statewide or are these outside as well?
So these are officers who are already Alaska Police Standard Council certified, so that's state of Alaska certified as police officers. And those individuals will be given credit for their amount of time that they've served elsewhere in the state. And this is a combination of officers from various departments, as well as from the state.
And Mr. Hall?
Yeah, Chief, I may have missed it. How many are in the current campaign?
I believe it's 17 right now.
7. Thank you.
Historically, over the past 10 years or so, we've been running 60 to 70% capacity, which becomes problematic. We really strive for 28 per class. And when you keep up with those who are retiring, those that we unfortunately lose to line-of-duty injuries or their own health reasons, and of course, from time to time, we'll have individuals that move on for various reasons. Doing classes 18 can't really keep up with that. So if we're looking to grow a department, we want to try to fill those classes up. I have met with the city manager last night, and one of the things I was very happy to share with them is the fact that we really do have a much larger base of individuals that we call up on the board. So in various phases, we haven't had those kind of numbers in the past. Because we know that through each stages, through the testing, through backgrounds, and through the training, we're going to lose numbers of individuals. Well, we've really grown that, so I think we're doing things right as far as developing a larger pool, but I'm not satisfied until we actually graduate full classes and so on.
Chief, I hear there's a new PERF study coming out that's going to show the amount of officers we need. It's a lot larger than the old PERF. When's that going to come out so we can look at it?
Yes, that information's been shared with the department as well as with City Hall, just a preliminary review of it. Now we're analyzing it, and we're hoping to get back something to the mayor's office in the next 30 days.
When it comes to the mayor's office, I appreciate you saying this, like you, because we're the ones that actually have to make the decision on funding.
Yes, sir.
And I'm surprised how many more officers we're going to need, so we need to recruit.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Patricia Bates,
The number ones we lost in the last
What was that number again?
41.
We had, in 2015, we had 41 people that either retired or changed jobs.
So basically, if you look at 15, 1 and 2, the number of candidates that would just about wash that out. Now, this is, it's not something that's unique to Anchorage, I can't stress that enough. This is something we see in law enforcement nationwide, if not around the world. It's not just our numbers, individuals into staying in the profession and getting into the profession. Academy classes are much smaller, and the pools to select from are getting smaller and smaller.
Mr. But we used to have such a huge pool.
Yes.
And you're right, the pool we've got is getting smaller and smaller. In many cases, because of benefits, we just don't have any more. When we had our own police and fire retirement system, we could cherry pick who we wanted. But on the new Tier 4, it's not much of an attraction to get people to want to do law enforcement for a career.
So each one of these things are definitely items of concern and need attention. And what we've done, and I think why we've been as successful as we are getting these laterals, is we take a hard look and can we overcome any of those obstacles, such as giving them longevity for previous time served and
Well, at
things
least we're not
like
going
that.
to post them in the village.
Sir?
At least we're not going to post them in the village like the troopers do.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Well, I guess a summary of Anchorage Police Department looking around the state, we don't steal anything with great ideas, I understand, but borrow them, recruit them, but suck them away from current employers in the state, which creates probably a shortage from there. Thank you for the report, Chief, appreciate that. Anything else?
No, sir.
Chief Ross, Code Enforcement, anything, sir?
Well, we've just done our most recent hire, so we're going to be full staff effective February 29th. And that's encouraging. We've had the opportunity now to go forward with some training, get everybody recertified with some basic things, first aid, CPR, that type of thing. We're also, as Assembly members know, we're working on rewrite for 15, Title 10, some 21 amendments, and really thank you for your support on that. Every time we clarify an ordinance, it makes it much easier for us to implement the will of the Assembly and make an impact on the community. And then, most importantly, with the passage of the marijuana ordinance, now we're doing some interagency coordination on how the review inspections and those types of things are going to go forward. So it's very, very positive right now.
Numbers of complaints overall, you've been tracking, are they about the same, are they up?
They're about the same. It's typically, it's very seasonal, and in the wintertime we slow way down on that, but then other areas pick up. But beyond code enforcement, we also have building plan review for services my staff performs, and a number of other things. So it's a wash, one way or the other. It's full workload, but seasonally just varies from what it is.
Anything? Mr. Hall?
Yeah. Just a quick shout out to Jack. I've been working on an ordinance about storage in yards that we're going to be introducing probably at the first meeting in March, as well as the rewrite of Title 15, and Jack's fingerprints are all over all of it. And I'm hoping that with what we're doing, we can deal with this kind of an epidemic we've got going on in the community of people storing in their yards, particularly for prevention in the future. If we get it passed, Jack tells me we're finally going to deliver an ordinance to him that he can actually have an effect on what's happening. So that'll be coming real soon. But Jack, thank you. Your participation in helping out was a great deal of help to us.
Thank you. Jack, just keep us in mind is, you know what your workload is. So as we put assets, we can try and build your career if we need to. Because I know we keep giving you ordinance and said, well, you'll do this and this and this. But we want to make sure you've got the manpower to do that.
And to answer that, you'd asked that question last week, and I had a chance to look a little further into it. And currently, we're adequately staffed. We're fine.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions, Mr. Ross? Fire department, I know Chief LeBlanc is unavailable, but Chief.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Chief Tolley's comments about the Spice Summit. I think it was a very valuable time. And give us an opportunity to see all of the pieces that this has affected, not just fire department, not just law enforcement, but across the board. We definitely want to pass on a thank you for the ordinance, because we definitely saw our numbers decline post-ordinance. And that's, Dr. Levy presented during the Spice Summit and talked about how, AFD's response to this, we're not supposed to call it an epidemic, but to this surge of spice-related calls. It really was very stressful for our employees. As everyone, I think, across the municipality suffers from short staffing, we are in the same boat. We had quite a few people who were tired of responding on these types of calls. We saw an additional 3,000 calls that we believe we can attribute to this in 2015. That is, we were already at capacity for the number of staff and equipment that we have available to serve the community, and this really put us over the edge and definitely helped us identify a weakness that we're trying to work on.
Mr. Steele has a comment.
Yeah, I had talked to some folks about staffing level and the fact that the spice epidemic was really putting a lot of pressure on Station 1. Are you rotating EMTs through Station 1 so that everybody gets a shot at it, or is Station 1 just taking pain?
Well, we've done a little of both. So we, as you all know, the ambulances all respond area-wide. So everyone from the outlying areas ended up getting pulled in. So not only did we cycle the ambulances through all of this, especially as we saw the spice calls move from just the downtown area, they hit Midtown pretty hard as well. What we found is many of our EMTs and paramedics who work in the outside or outer core area, they started volunteering to cycle through. So they would all do time, and so we had several of our paramedics from the Eagle River Station who would move in, and they do like a cycle at Station 1 to really help balance the workload. It's just with short staffing, and we ended up with quite a few people on leave due to injury related stuff, that the overtime, we only have so much to pull for overtime people
Is there a burnout? I mean,
Yes, to be blunt, yes, we have a burnout issue, and it is due to that call volume. We had several days where many of our medic leads were hitting the 18 to 23 calls a shift. And that is definitely overutilization. We are working on a plan right now to balance our staffing a little bit better so that we can bring some more resources online, because we don't, it takes us a while to get more people in place, and we don't have a lot of even light at the end of the tunnel, because we suffer from difficulty with staffing as well.
Chief, you have an academy that's either in the works or you're recruiting for?
We're in the middle of conditional offers right now. Our academy will start on March 29th. We made conditional offers to 25 candidates. Actually, to 25 candidates, had one refusal, and we were able to bring up another candidate into the pool, so we have a solid 25. Going into conditional offers, our projection is that will allow us to graduate 20. And that puts us with fulfills all of our budgeted vacancies for operations staff at that point. We will be reviewing what appropriate staffing is. We have our minimum numbers. We have to have 97 people in those seats every single day. We need to know how many people per shift. We need to cover overtime and leave and training and those kind of things. So we're still working on that final number. When we have that should give us an idea of where we really, truly need to be to manage our operations, especially our overtime budget, very well. And that will help us decide whether we have an academy in 2017, or if we can bump that to 2018 and then get on a 2-year cycle.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you lose any firefighters in 2015 to retirement or just leaving?
I think we ended up losing 15.
15.
Yes, 15. And our normal attrition rate is 10 to 12 a year. Last year, we definitely saw a few more people leaving. We are hitting a cycle now to where in the mid-90s, we had some very large hire groups, and they're hitting their 20-year infers or 25 years infers. So we expect for the next, projections for the next probably 10-year period is that we will see probably the 12 to 15 to 18 attrition rate. So that's why if we could do, academies of 30 every other year would really help cushion that. And we're still working on that final number of where we truly need to be. And we've had significant support from City Hall, from the municipal manager's office, and as well as the assembly to really help us get where we need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing else, thanks. Is there anything else?
No.
Health Department, I know there was a good report with Mr. Freeman, Mr. Sargent Freeman. Is there
Yeah.
anything further you'd like to?
Thank you. Just, again, thank you for giving us that opportunity. We have been very actively working on the marijuana regulations related to the public health dimension of that, as far as retail stores and testing and those kinds of things of the product. So that's taken a great deal of time. And again, working with our partners within the municipality, the Marijuana Control Board, and that's my primary update.
OEM, good. Save the best for last, maybe?
Yep, hey, there you go. Well, last night we held a meeting for the Governor Hill City Council, or excuse me, Community Council, and we went over several things. I have to really give a thanks out to the Fire Department, Police Department, Department of Health. We had the school district there, Red Cross, Port Authorities, and we also had the state Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So basically, we went in force, and we gave them a scenario, an exercise scenario of a fire at the port and how they would have to deal with evacuation. So we covered many topics. We covered, of course, evacuation, covered preparedness, sheltering, what the school district would do. It was about 2.5 hours of meeting, and they seemed very pleased with our presentation. We answered a lot of questions, so that went off really well. And we couldn't have done it without all the partnerships, so I really do thank the Fire Department, Police Department, and everyone. So, and then also, April 1st is rapidly approaching, so Alaska Shield will be going on. UAA will be doing the active shooter exercise, and APD has stepped up and are going to participate fully in that exercise, so that's fantastic. And then fire department will be doing a urban search and rescue event, same day, out of the training center. And also fire department will be doing the active shooter EMS enforcement. And that's what we have on our schedule right now.
It hasn't been lost on anybody to be doing an active shooter drill.
Yes.
This last show on April Fool's Day.
We tried to get that changed, and for some reason, someone really liked
So
it.
communication is key, so when people start calling or people start reporting it, not to make light of it, it's a very serious topic and needs to be addressed, of course, trained, but I can just imagine the call
Yeah.
coming in and some of the commentary. Anything else, Mr. Fish?
Yeah, I had a question for you, if I may. The legislature is debating the issue of carrying firearms. And I understand that the university is not happy about it. What's going on with that right now
So,
from your perspective?
I was gonna make a comment towards the end, and in fact, I think I will, so we can finish the business up, because we have another topic on the agenda that's pretty critical. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll take that, and I'll
That's
get back to it.
fine.
And remind me about SB 91 as well. I think that's some
All right.
comments I'd like to think our committee should take a position on from consent. Okay, anything else, Ms. Fitch?
No, that's-
Any other comments? Okay, going to new business, we've had Mr. Lassard. I'm gonna just briefly make a comment on the theft of copper wiring and secondhand metal recyclers, including jewelry, gold and such. Chief, I've been doing some research. Texas has some laws in the books. The state of Kentucky actually passed some regulations requiring this. Mr. Trainee has personal experience recently through a family member. We really have a growing and largely burgeoning business from people taking items that have been proceeds from thefts, if you will. And it appears that the state is leaning towards raising dollar amounts for things that they might even be felony. And likelihood not allowing jail time, but it would be of great help, I think, to the police department to have the tool being a registry of people who are selling items to a secondhand recycler, merchant, or recycling business. Something that we see regularly at pawn shops due to regulations, both state and city level. And so I know you guys are pretty busy with everything going on, but if there's anybody that's done any research, we'd love to have that input to Ms. Tucker and perhaps the Department of Law.
Do you guys have anything drafted on this yet? Because otherwise I'm gonna turn to the Department of Law and ask them to work with you guys, let's come up with something. Because I'm concerned about the amount of copper being sold, because they don't want it. They'll take any copper you bring.
You're right, Mr. Trainee. The issues are, those thefts occur because there is a monetary gain available to those people. If you take that monetary gain away, then they'll find a different way to get it. But it's very obvious. The Anchorage Police Department has been working for 2 years with the municipal attorney's office, and specifically Dean Gates, about public safety issues. And he's working on ordinances to work up how to make our communities safer. So I would ask if Julia or someone would talk about.
I'll give you a call.
Perfect. Okay. And you do know he's hearing his hearing?
I know he's hearing.
Okay, awesome.
We've worked with him on several orders.
He's very good.
He is excellent. I have nothing but praise for him. He's done an outstanding job for us.
So I'll get with him. We'll make sure we put some fire into this and get this thing accomplished.
We would appreciate that.
Any other comments from anybody referenced this particular event? Okay. Moving to one that's very important, and Mr. Jackson, thank you for bringing it forward on the agenda. We have the ordinance unnumbered at this point, it's draft.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, if you would allow me, there is a trailer park owner here and approached me, besides the fact that, I'd like for her to make some comments, if you allow it. Ms. Michael, could you please, address the Public Safety Committee and make some comments about your concern?
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a,
Could you stand up if you would? Yeah, we
I'm
can
a
hear
whole
you.
lot taller, but.
Yeah.
We have, it's on recording, so if you just identify yourself and.
Okay, thank you. I'm Lottie Michael, and I have Golden Nugget RV Park. It's at, on the bar across from Costco. We're open year round. We've got about 215 spaces. Up until 2 years ago, camping in the big lots
was prohibited according to code. Actually, code enforcement took Fred Myers to task, and I testified. I had pictures showing campers camping all night, and Fred Myers was issued a citation. And they haven't had any campers since then. On a personal level, it's affecting my income, on a personal level. But on a bigger picture, because I grew up here in Anchorage, this building was on my paper route when it was about 3 or 4 homes. So this is my home. On a personal level, I find it offensive driving down C Street and seeing 12 to 15 RVs on Walmart's lots, on Cabela's, on all of the big lots. They were not designed for RV parks. My RV park has potable water, has showers, has round-the-clock surveillance. It has a gift shop. It has, fire pits, picnic tables. In the big lots, what I've witnessed, and I've got photographs, propane tanks out for weeks on some of the RVs. There were children riding their bicycles in these parking lots, round and through the RVs that were camping there. Now, the city also owns an RV park. There's spaces available in that. There's no reason this is happening. Those lots were, and I've been in commercial real estate for 41 years, those lots were designated parking lots. Even Cabela's, it was a RV parking. It wasn't RV overnight camping. Because at the time they went in for their permits, the code said no RV camping. So they didn't have all of the other things. But I don't believe it's fair, and I don't believe that was the intent for us to drive through our beautiful city and see it. I live on the park, at the end of the park strip, so I walk my dog on the park strip. I see RVs and people camping on the park strip. I don't think it's appropriate. There are places for it. There's not a shortage. I think this was an oversight when we made changes to Title 21, and I think it's appropriate that we look at it and say, what was the intent? What was the spirit of it? Thank you, and I'll.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thus, we had our attorney draft an ordinance, and a week ago, our attorney met with Mr. Train, myself, the municipal clerk, Jack Frost, and we reviewed the ordinance, and there were some really great comments that were made. And the ordinance that you have on the table right now is not the latest one. What I'm about to pass out right now is the latest, and there's still a few edits that haven't been done yet because our attorney is out sick. But anyway, if I can just go over this a little bit, as best that I can. Okay, on page 1, number C, it adds the words, on line 35, the words overnight camping. And on line 36, it adds the words parks and recreation, because it's not cultural recreation services anymore, it's parks and recreation, so that's like a housekeeping change. And item number D is brand new, which, you can read, but it basically says that two persons may park a travel trailer, motorhome, or camper in the parking lot of a commercial establishment or in a parking facility for the purpose of overnight camping or residing therein, whether temporarily or not, unless the commercial establishment or parking structure is licensed as a camper park under Title 10. We have a new section, Section 2, 10.45065, which relates to camper parks. In Section 3, line 37, it recognizes a fine if there's a violation. On page 3 or 4, there are some changes made to definition for clarity. And on page 3 of 4, line 36, there is the health and safety inspection requirement. And then on line 45, it addresses overnight parking. Anyway, I was hopeful, Mr. Train and I, that this committee would review the ordinance and support the ordinance. Our plan is to take it to the Community and Economic Development Committee after this committee because Title I is referenced in the ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, just quickly, maybe it's a question for Jack or something. Just confused about the history of the illegality of this or the enforcement of it. It seems like, at least for when I think of the Walmart, especially on Old Seward, at least the last 15 years at least, it's constantly been every summer. You go by and there's RVs parked there as long as I've been here. Is that not the case, or am I imagining that, or? Ms. Michaels made it sound like it was a recent change and now all of a sudden it's legal.
The change in, on the new Title 21 is that they allowed, through all use districts, that people could, that you could stay in a camper or RV 90 days in a calendar year. They made it completely across all districts. What this ordinance does is targets commercial districts. In other words, it was just openly permitted, no matter what the district was. It was R1, 2, 3, or 4, whether it was B3, I1, PLI.
Mr. Jackson, Mr.
Thank
Train.
you, Mr. Chairman. I just need to make a point. In addition to, during our meeting, we also asked, on our behalf, Mandy to send an invitation to folks from Fred Meyer's, Walmart. Is anybody here from those agencies? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to make that point because we always like to bring the stakeholders to the table. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Train.
Just a while back, we did actually make it so you could not park overnight in large lots. And a few years ago, that was changed back, so they were able to do it again. We had hearings on it, and it went on for a while.
Mr. Steele.
My concern is the school district hosts a camper or summer campers that they use for security purposes, and let's make sure that does not eliminate.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, I had actually asked this, Jack, I don't know if he has that information. How many commercial parking pads are there in Anchorage?
Our count was, including Portage, is approximately 755, I believe.
And I'm assuming, Mr. Curry, you're going to give the...
Yes, sir. Mr. Evans.
Yeah, that's the same thing I was doing. Let them speak.
Sure. Folks, we have audience participation in the agenda, but at this particular moment, I know Ms. Michael had a quick comment, if you would, and then you already had one time to talk
I
about.
was just going to address Mr. Evans' question.
Okay,
Because
please.
prior to, it was about in the early 90s, 94, one of the park owners, because it was against the law then, but he put notices on all of the RVs that were camping at Walmart. And that wasn't appropriate. I wasn't involved with the industry then. But and Walmart didn't have any campers in there for a couple of years because Mr. Frost's office was authorized to police it. But then when the law changed, it just came back in mass. And I just don't think that was the intent.
So we have member representative from Walmart, Fred Meyer, who else?
Cabela's.
Would any of you like to speak a couple minutes on this topic?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Scott Patton. I'm the market manager for all the stores in the state of Alaska.
For
Walmart. For Walmart. I think this is a good conversation to have. I don't know that we certainly don't disagree with what is being on the table right here. We certainly, it causes more problems for us as a business as well. So it's not that we would rather they go and visit your establishment. I think what's more of a concern for us, in reading through the amendment or the proposal, is what kind of support. We certainly don't want to be a burden. I'm listening to all of the presentations today, and I'm thinking, my goodness, look at all of the things that our community services are being tasked with, and then we want to add this on. Our challenge is when we get resistance from these individuals who show up on the lot, what kind of support can we expect to get? Because it isn't that we don't want to support this. Sometimes it becomes more of a confrontation for us, to be quite honest with you. And so we don't want to be a burden on any one of our social services in the community either. But also, how is that gonna be incorporated in? I mean, how can we be a good corporate steward or partner with this as well? Because it's not by, it'll never be by sheer neglect. That's never gonna be our intention, because we would rather they go stay somewhere else. But we do find during the summer months, as Mr. Evans was mentioning, those individuals who drive the Alcan Highway, I mean, that's kind of that's a tradition with those travelers. I mean, they're used to stopping everywhere along the way. And I don't know how to, I think our locals will be able to curb a lot easier, but those individuals are going to be harder for us to police in the middle of the night, as they just kind of pop in all of a sudden and decide they're going to camp out for 4 or 5 hours when, our stores are closed and we're trying to take care of business inside of a closed facility. So.
Cabela's, I know you were next.
Yeah, Kevin Weeks, I'm the store manager at the Cabela store, and I agree 100% with what he was saying. And Mr. Frost and I were kind of talking about this the other day. At any given time, and I realize that we have children riding bikes in parking lots and stuff like that, but that's poor parenting. And that's, I know exactly what she's talking about, and I know exactly what he's talking about. We have signs in our store, and we invite, and when we opened up our store, we had the permit to have overnight parking in our store. We do have potable water, we do have gray water, we do have an RV dump, we do have big spaces to accommodate people. But oftentimes we get prostitution trailers, drug trailers, all sorts of other trailers that are a burden on all societies that end up in Target, they end up in Walmart, they end up in our store. So it's a bigger picture to just what we're here to talk about, and just, from the Golden Nugget to us. But we don't invite anybody to stay overnight. When people show up in our trailers or in our parking lot, they do show up, at midnight, 1 a.m., and we're closed. We have nobody in our business, so we have nobody to essentially enforce that code. And to echo what he was saying, sometimes with these derelict trailers, it becomes a safety hazard for our outfitters or our managers to walk out there and knock on the door. And if nobody responds, what do? You knock louder. And if that person inside is intoxicated or under the influence, now we're in a safety predicament ourselves. And so we obviously want to support, all the local businesses, because, we're one happy family here. We provide jobs for a lot of folks in the municipality as well. So, if we can find some sort of resolution where everyone's a winner, that's what we're here to support. But most of the folks that, and I can tell you, I walked into our store one day, we'll have 60, 70 trailers out in our parking lot, and it's crazy. And some folks abuse it, some people are just traveling on the way to Kenai. But, I can tell you, because I sent a message out to all the managers across the company, is there any other stores that have this opportunity? And there's not one across the lower 48. So do we really want to be the first municipality to say, hey, welcome, visitor from Texas, visitor from Washington, glad you make it up here, but you got to get out of our lot or else we're going to find you. So I don't think it looks good on the municipality. It's not going to look good on my business. And if we could find a way to get them over there through marketing, advertising, I'm not quite sure. I'm all for it, but that's my piece. Thank you.
Fred Meyer, can you come? Fred Meyer?
No.
Yeah, I don't think the message got out to all the retailers.
So, Ms. Michael, I know you might have rebuttals to this, we could go on all day with it. So this is a draft ordinance. It hasn't been presented yet, correct?
It has not been introduced by the Assembly.
And I actually would like to have that discussion, and I don't know if we want to have a work session, Mr. Chair, you may have to schedule something where we can get an opportunity for other businesses to participate, stakeholders. I do believe it's a growing concern, but I also recognize the industry that, I think there's some leeway in the sense of, like, it sounds like your lot may actually qualify for
We do qualify.
Yeah, you might qualify under this ordinance or close to it.
But we
Yeah.
don't want to be that department, because all I'd have to do, and it depends on the definition of a washroom, because we have bathrooms, but that's not typically, it's not a shower, it's not, everything else we can,
But I guess what I'm saying is with some amending to the ordinance, there may be something where we can have.
Sure, but to Mr. Frost's point, there's 750 in a bank's or retail establishment.
Well,
Restaurants.
just so you know, for the public's knowledge, when an ordinance is introduced, then there's a discussion, then there's amendments possibly, and then there's a vote, and it has to pass from the majority, and then of course the mayor has a chance to veto it. But the bottom line is that this is a good starting point for discussion, certainly dialogue with all the stakeholders. And I do believe that we should have some accommodations for those that drive in the middle of the night, the businesses are closed, and there's no other place that somebody, until the next morning, perhaps on business day, that someone has to check into your customer service and say, hey, we've got a motorhome, we're out here. kind of get a little parking pass or ticket or something, and that way at least you know who they are and that they're there that one night or something.
Right.
Mr. Train.
Well, I'm gonna set a work session up on this. As soon as it's introduced, I'll set the work session up, let everybody know.
Okay, I think that's.
I wanna make sure we take care of the concerns of the industry.
Can we,
Ultimately, we're gonna have to have code enforcement. More work to do.
Mr. Jackson, rather than having a stand position from today's meeting, is it be adequate to have?
Oh, absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely, thank you.
Just a quick question for Walmart. Is that a national policy for Walmart to provide the service, or is it a store-by-store issue?
Actually, just as he was saying, I mean, across the lower 48, I mean, we've always been very accommodating to a single overnight stay is what we, as a company policy that we have. We've always allotted for an overnight stay for travelers. So.
Okay.
Ms. Michael, I'm sorry, we're getting to the end of the day. Is there something quickly?
Well, every municipality has their own laws on parking. Walmart's parking lots are parked for the size of their retail store. It's not parked for overnight. And I'm not really complaining about if it's one camper, one night. But, I mean, I've got pictures, and I'll show both of you fellas. There were people parked all summer
Right.
with propane.
So, Ms. Michael, that would be a great conversation if you have them available today, or if you can work the meeting with them. Bottom line is that we will move forward for today's agenda, and this item will likely be soon. The agenda, we'll have a work session. So we'll have further dialogue, Ms. Michael. I'm not trying to cut you off, but we are towards the end of the agenda here. If there's nothing else from our members, this is the time on the agenda for audience participation. Is there anybody here that has a matter that we haven't discussed that would like to talk about not on the agenda, anything about public safety concerns? I do see a group of young folks in the back row. This is your time to kind of set up right, open your eyes a little bit. There's a couple of minutes. I would actually like to know if you're here participating as a member of a community from a group or some program. Can you guys, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Would you guys mind standing up and just telling who you are and where you're from?
What troop you're with?
Mr. Chairman, I would comment?
Yes.
Right, Carmen Reed emailed us and asked if they can come to this meeting today, and. if
I think
they
it's
can
wonderful.
address
This
it,
is
yeah.
great participation. Thank you, Ms. Grayjack. Can you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, we're from Troop 26. We are Boy Scouts who are participating in citizenship in the community merit badge.
Can you tell us who you are? Introduce yourself.
My name's Ryan Gum.
Zach Curtis.
David Lundell.
Sebastian Reed. I'm Seth J. Miller. Tad Wade. Kenan Hellman.
And you have a troop leader with you?
I am the assistant patrol leader, assistant senior patrol leader. It is a boy-led troop. We also have counselors, district appointed counselors that basically run the.
What pack again is it, or troop?
Troop 26.
Where are you guys sponsored from?
We're sponsored from Amazing Grace Lutheran Church off of Elmore Road.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the meeting. I hope you learned a lot about what's going on in public safety in our community.
Yes.
Well, Anybody else? Anything else for the audience participation? Mr. Millstrong, you're quiet up here. Mr. Millstrong, University Center?
Not today.
Thank you. Okay, time now is 11:35. Concludes the meeting.